The impact that this museum has on young people has also grown exponentially. Our mission is to preserve the history heritage of the Navy SEALs and all our predecessors, honor our fallen at the memorial, and then support our families through our Trident House Charities program. But one of the things that has grown over the last couple of years is the impact that we have on young people, education, because they don't get a lot of this stuff in school, or they're not impacted by it because there's only 1.2% of this country has ever been in the military. So if they don't have a place like this to go and learn, they don't get it. So that's one of the things that I'm very proud of that we've done at the museum in the last couple of years.
You're listening to The Hot Wash by Born Primitive Tactical. I'm Bruno Fallon. I've spent my 4-decade career in some of the most elite units in the United States Special Operations community, where I learned that elite operators aren't made overnight. They're forged through hardship, discipline, and relentless drive. In each episode, I sit down with the most accomplished and innovative leaders in special operations, industry, coaching, and athletes of all disciplines. Let's jump right in. All right, everybody, welcome back to The Hot Wash. Bruno with Born Primitive. We are honored to be here with Rick Kaiser, longtime friend of over 2 decades. He is the CEO of the National SEAL Museum, and that is where we're located today, and honored to be having the podcast. So, Rick, welcome.
Thanks, Bruno. It's good to be here.
It's great to be here. So we've got some good history, and I'm going to start with that, and then we're going to talk about the mission of the National SEAL Museum. I, as everybody knows, was a former Army guy, and my last assignment was to be the liaison to Naval Special Warfare Development Group. And when I got there, Rick had retired and left as an active duty guy and was now the deputy operations officer. And for anybody that's ever been at that command, you're essentially the continuity and running the command. And Rick was the brains of, as everybody came and went, he was the continuity. I quickly learned that if I wanted to know anything at that command, it was to get close to Rick. And we got a pretty good relationship going, and ended up, when I retired, I became a government civilian working for Rick, and Rick was my boss. I'm not sure how he liked that, but I do know when Rick left and came down here that my environment changed a little bit, and I actually moved within the command and went to another place. So Rick, I was tied pretty close to you. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate everything you did for me and bringing me over to the Navy side and let me bring a little Army doctrine to you.
I mean, it was difficult for me to slow things down and actually dumbify my language so you could understand, but it took a little time, and we made it happen.
Whatever. Rick's one of those ones that likes to, put the cloak on and play like he's not a smart guy, but we know he's a genius. There's 2 guys in my tenure at Naval Special Warfare Development Group that seem to be the only 2 guys that always knew what was going on at the command. Rick Kaiser is one of them. And the other one is actually getting ready to become the SOCOM commander. That's Mitch Bradley. He was an amazing N3 and commander. And I always wondered how the 2 of you knew everybody that was out the door, how they were doing it. And you guys kept a handle on it. Yeah.
Well, Mitch, as you know, is a very smart guy, and he, got the big picture. And as long as I worked the detail is what I needed to do. And that was my job. We worked very well together, and now he's going to be the big boss. So God bless him.
Yeah. God bless him. I actually, and we're going to get into a story and talk about our injuries, my elbow and your leg. And we'll talk jump stories later, but I actually got the opportunity last year in June. Both the JSOC and USOC command teams were over in Normandy, and our retired jump team got to go out of a 130 with those guys. It was separate passes, and it kind of got a little funny because the retirees all hit the drop zone and the active duty guys didn't.
Oh, great.
But Mitch did have the best comeback ever. He's like, he got the true D-Day experience. They never saw the drop zone. So it was all good.
Excellent.
So one of the things I want to talk about before we dive into talking about the mission of the National SEAL UDT Museum is our backdrop here. We've got a Task Force 160, MH60 that's behind us. That it's kind of fun that it's in the museum, because I can remember when you were down here and I was still back at the beach on helping you get this aircraft here, and it's here and it's set up. And tell us about the history of this thing.
Well, there's only one reason we have this here right now, and that's you. So thank you very much. It is the only one, as far as I know, from the 160th in a museum, because all the rest of them are usually sold to a third world country, and fix them up and keep flying them. So this is it. Other than Fort Rucker has a Black Hawk, but it's not a special ops Black Hawk. So this thing is a real piece of history. So it's flown for over 30 years. It was shot down 3 separate times. As you know, they put new engines in it, patched the holes, and put it back up in the air. And it's flown in everything since 92 to 2014.
And
so
it's
that's every single battle that you can imagine. This thing has been there. So
it's a piece of history.
Yeah.
And it's got one very unique mission tied to the SEAL community. It's actually got quite a bit, but it's one you can advertise and talk about that. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's on the placard on the door.
Yeah. So the rescue of Jessica Buchanan in Somalia, they flew this from, I think it was for Djibouti, all the way down to get her. I don't even know how, you could tell me how long it takes to fly that mission, but they actually flew it down there, and this is one of the helicopters they used to pick her up.
Yeah, so
the team.
Super cool that the only 160th aircraft sitting in a national museum, and it's got a lot of SEAL culture, and it's sitting here, and the two of us here actually were instrumental in getting it here. So it's awesome. And if you've never been to, what I want to transition to is the actual mission of the National SEAL and UDT Museum. We're in it. We've got it really darkened up just for our setting here. But if you ever want to see an epic military museum of an amazing culture, I mean, everybody knows the frogmen, the history of it, but it is all displayed here. All it's timeless. It goes through every generation. Off camera, off to my left, is the Maersk, Alabama rescue capsule from Captain Phillips. We've got off-road vehicles to our right. It's you've got it displayed with every era here, and it's kind of cool to walk through. I don't care if you know anything about SEAL culture, but how long did it take you to get to the point where this is, I mean, set up the way it is?
Well, the museum here in Fort Pierce has been open for 40 years. 40 years. So 40. That's a long time. So it's obviously been growing ever since it first started back in 1985. There's a couple old frogmen that lived in the area, and they talked the county into turning it was called the St. Lucie County Treasure Museum. And it had a bunch of treasure that was found off the shore, and it got broken into. And the people that ran it decided to pull all the gold out of here, and it became a vacant building. And then the old frogmen talked them into turning it into a Navy SEAL museum. And since then, it's grown and grown and grown. And we have a $20 million expansion planned, hopefully in the next couple of years, because the history of the SEALs is not ending. And there's a little bit of history you probably don't know, is that the Navy SEALs are the senior special operations force in the U.S.
Seriously.
So since World War II, every other force, Rangers, you name it, they shut them down at a certain point and started them back up, but they never shut down the Navy SEALs.
No, and I had the privilege of, in Normandy last year, I was the lone Army Ranger on a 8-man team, 7 frogmen, and we were the Neptune Raiders, and we were honoring the UDT guys that went in, which is little known. Everybody's seen Save It Private Ryan and seen the Army coming across the beach. They don't know all the UDT guys that went in to clear the beachhead before that. So they were even there before. Yeah. So it's a crazy history. And this was the actual training site for the first UDTs, correct?
Yeah, because a lot of people, actually, they're Naval Combat Demolition Units were the first units. But yeah, people ask, why the hell are you in Fort Pierce? And it's like, well, that's why. This is hallowed ground. This is the base. We are on the base that existed back in World War II from 1942, right after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, till 1945 when the war ended. This is where they trained.
That's incredible.
Yep.
So you've recently opened up another one on the West Coast out in San Diego, correct?
Yes, San Diego, California, right across from the USS Midway. It's going to officially open on October the 4th. We'll have that much more reach now, because, Fort Pierce is a hard place to get to, and we don't get a lot of West Coast. So our impact will grow exponentially with that, right? So San Diego, gets 4 million people a year just visiting the waterfront, and we're right there on the waterfront. So our numbers will be great. And, one thing, I don't know if you talk about it now, but the impact that this museum has on young people is also grown exponentially. Our mission is to preserve the history heritage of the Navy SEALs and all our predecessors, honor our fallen at the memorial, and then support our families through our Trident House Charities program. But one of the things that has grown over the last couple of years is the impact that we have on young people, education, because they don't get a lot of this stuff in school, or they're not impacted by it, because there's only 1.2% of this country has ever been in the military. So if they don't have a place like this to go and learn, they don't get it. So that's, one of the things that I'm very proud of that we've done at the museum in the last couple of years.
It's an amazing museum. I'll tell you, everybody vacations to Florida. If you want to stop and make an impact to your children, or even see the culture, you got to come through this museum. It's open every day except Monday, correct?
That's right, 10 to 4.
And that's why we're here taping today on a Monday, by the way, is we're giving the museum closed down because we didn't want to interrupt the public. So let me ask you a question. How does the museum grow? How does it get bigger? How does it get supported? How does it get funded?
So we don't accept any outside funds, right? The museum keeps itself open through like admissions and like t-shirt sales. We keep this place running tip top. All our fundraising goes to our charities programs. We have a canine program we give the guys that are suffering PTSD or TBI. We have a scholarship program. We gave over $500,000 last year. The kids, mainly kindergarten through 12, because our guys are all over the world and their schools are not up to speed. We have respite houses, 2 Trident houses here in Fort Pierce, where guys get to bring their families, rest, relax, reconnect. And then we have a family support program. And then that just helps out guys that, as you know, in the military, not everything's covered on the medical side. So if somebody needs help, they contact us and we help them. So that's what all our fundraising does, and that's what I concentrate on for us.
No, that's awesome. I recently had one of your demo team members, Sean Rosario. We're big advocates of supporting Warrior Health. And I just actually had Dr. Chris Free on, who wrote the book on operator syndrome, blast injury, and all that. And it's huge. There's so much that the VA and traditional, our TRICARE, Humana, Medicare doesn't cover. So that's awesome that you're doing that. So one of the things that I remember, I came down and spoke in November. You do like an annual muster in November that people can come see. Talk about that a little bit.
So if you're in the Navy, when you say muster, that means the crew of the ship gets it all in one spot and gets word from the captain for the orders of the day. So our muster is on Veterans Day in November, and we have thousands and thousands of people here. We have music and dancing, and we have Navy SEAL demonstrations with helicopters and dogs and all sorts of stuff. And it's just a good time to get together. And it's not just SEALs, it's mostly civilians, and it all come in here to have a great time.
They're extremely impressive. I'll tell you the same thing that I tell people about going to Normandy and D-Day. You want to come see that on Veterans Day in November, and then you want to pick a separate day to come to the museum because there's so much going on during that day that you really won't enjoy the museum as much and take the time. So it's definitely, to me, a 2-visit event there. So you say you said October is when the San Diego is opening?
October the 4th is the grand opening.
And
to the public.
How's that going out there?
It's going great. I mean, it's California is California. There is challenges, but it is going to open. It's taken us years to get to this point. It's going to be a little bit different than Fort Pierce. We don't have the space that we do here. So it's going to be a lot more interactive stuff, a lot virtual reality. We have a company called Havoc, another team guy that has designed this whole Navy SEAL experience that you can put your goggles on and learn what it's like to jump and dive and do SEAL stuff.
That's
just for us.
Mainstream culture for what the kids are doing nowadays.
Yeah.
Nobody goes outside and plays anymore. Everybody does video games,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And you told me a little secret that you got something else coming here that's going to pair up with this MH60 pretty good.
Yeah, we're working on a Little Bird. It needs to get restored. But we, at least the reason we got this particular one is because it has the history, like this Black Hawk, of being in operations, right? So we got the right numbers. So when we talk about stuff at the museum, we like to have authentic things. So unfortunately, we got to rebuild this one from the ground up. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but we should have it in the next 12 months.
Well, you got some friends, so
yeah,
and I've got friends. So as you get it, when you need those little pieces and parts, you let me know, and we'll reach out. The the Little Bird Community A and B Company would be honored to have something down here like the 60 community. You were saying you just had some Night Stalkers down here training, and some of the guys came in and saw this. And that's one thing I'll say about our community is to get anywhere you go, it's a joint service thing. And one of the things that I always prided myself on being a Night Stalker was, I always referred to the ground force as the customer because that's why we existed. I was an assault platform and I existed for the customer. And the relationships were made in blood. It's something that we have another guest coming on after Rick, Norm Hooten, who we've had on the podcast before. And these two guys spent some time in Mogadishu and Somalia before with the Black Hawk as a great reference point for those of you who've seen the movie Black Hawk Down. But it's one team, one fight, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So have you signed this helicopter? So we lift the cowling. All the 160th guys that visit have signed it. So
I've got to sign it.
Okay, we'll get that done later.
Yeah, we put a lot of work on it.
Yeah,
you got that Dillon minigun sitting there too, which we love that. So good. So let me ask you before I start asking you some fun other stuff is if you could pass on to any of our listeners, because we've got a really good following of soft community and a lot of people in the industry might be able to help. What can be done for the museum that you could reach out and ask about?
I would say go to our website, Navy SEAL Museum. It's pretty easy. The front page, you can visit Fort Pierce or San Diego, wherever you're closest to, or if you want to see both of them, and just learn, because our website is a bunch of history involved in it. A lot of our archives and pictures from World War II to the present. So you got to remember, there was no such thing as a frogman before World War II. So when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they came up with this plan, and that's when we were created. So it goes back all the way from World War II to the present day. So you want to learn about not only what's going on at the museum, you want to learn about the history and the heritage. That's the place to go.
That's awesome. One of the things I'll also say is, as an Army guy, when you're in the soft community, whether it's in the tier units, Special Forces, 160th, or Rangers, that is the top echelon of the Army. That's the chief of staff of the Army's babies. That's his most prestigious force. The one thing the SEALs have always had to overcome is they're in a service component that has aircraft carriers, guided missile cruisers, submarines, jets and all that kind of stuff. And they're always fighting for their peace. And I want to say you're one of the smallest communities in SOF.
Oh, for sure.
And it's very unique because the reason I bring it up is having invested so much time being with them is it's a different culture. And I used to try and explain to folks that the one thing I used to love about working with the SEAL community was the unconventional mindset. It was never cookie cutter. It was always attacking a problem a new way, sometimes pretty outlandish, but it always worked pretty good. And that was one of the things that kept me there for 15 years active duty and as a civilian, which was an interesting run. I realized once I left my last job there that the longest place I had ever been in 40 years and 5 months of government service was at Naval Special Warfare as an Army guy.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy. So there's only, between 2,500 and 3,000 SEALs total active duty. That's it. So 600 around are officers and the rest are enlisted guys. So we're a very small community. So for every one SEAL, there are 7 to 10 support people. So when we talk about a SEAL team, it really is a team, because SEALs really can't do anything by themselves without all the assistance and support that we get from everything from admin to medical to intelligence to, transportation, helicopter support, you name it. So we are a small unit, and that's what I think helps us do the challenge of modern warfare, because there's a few guys and they can take their idea and run it up the flagpole and get approved, believe it or not, sometimes, and actually make a difference in how we're doing things.
Well, one of the things you're seeing now, you saw it with Admiral McCraven, you're getting ready to see with Mitch Bradley, is you're starting to see SEAL officers break that 3 and 4 star and major combat and commander roles, which in the past, I think to fight for your piece of the pie, the guys were sitting at the 1 and 2 star level mostly, and the Navy was mostly run by fleet admirals and stuff like that. So it's good to see that and get your voice represented. But I think that's also a product of, 20 years of grinding at war and a lot of the missions that have gone public. And it's some of the missions were some of the most high profile missions. And I know you guys take it on the chin for the books and movies and stuff like that. But a lot of that comes from the public wanting it.
Absolutely. I was telling you earlier, I walk a very fine line here as the CEO of the Navy SEAL Museum between serving and educating the public and then making sure I don't step over the line for the team, right? Because they'll let me know.
Yeah. And I'm, if anybody knows that my intro for this podcast is I am always going to stay in good standing with the community. And that's why we don't really get deep into actions on the X or names of units or anything like that, because I want to be able to walk in any team room and still be welcomed. After 40 years of service, that's my culture. We're talking about books. Why don't you tell me?
Okay.
Let's talk about Frogman Stories by Rick Kaiser.
Well, see, that is a COVID book. I was stuck at home for, Florida, the free state of Florida, thank God. We were shut down for a couple months. But while I was home, I just I need something to do. So I wrote the book, or at least I started to write the book. And then we came back to work. And after about a year, it was pretty much done. And I thought to myself, I better do something with it, or else it's just going to sit on my computer. So I called Admiral McCraven, who's an author, and asked for his advice and help. And then the other guy I called was Jack Carr.
Nice.
Yes, and because I know him because we served together. I shouldn't say served together. He was one of the augments that came through Dev Group, and then we put him through the ringer. So anyway, through both their advice, they told me how to get published and go through that process. And there's the book.
So how can people get a hold of it besides coming here to the gift shop?
Well, it's on Amazon, so you can go to Frogman Stories right on Amazon and
all right, Frogman Stories of Rick Kaiser. And the thing I want to point out for any of my Army brethren listen to this is not Rick Kaiser's story and all the cool shit he's done. This is some really cool stories about frogmen. And Rick, like myself, likes to keep it clean. So there's nothing in here that's going to put him in a status that jeopardizes anything. But Rick, you're going to sign this for me before I leave.
I will. There's actually a picture or two pictures in there. One of when I was a small child, my mother dressed me up like an Army guy. And I got, like your little class picture. And then the next year she dressed me up as a sailor. Thank God. And that's what stuck, so.
Gotcha. So you're actually, and this is a running joke with me being an Army guy, is I always said that, I always give the SEALs a hard time. I'm like, nobody grew up playing sailor. Everybody grew up playing everybody grows up playing Army man.
That's right.
I mean, every BB gun war I was in as a kid, which people don't even know about nowadays, was as an Army guy.
Absolutely.
So you played sailor.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually have a couple Army guys working here at the museum. So we're totally a joint museum.
Hell yeah. One of the coolest pictures there, obviously the unit we were at has some history on it. There's a picture of Rick, and it had to be pretty early in your career, but you have this like white sailor belt on in civilian clothes that was in the hallway there. And I looked at that picture and I'm like, this has got to be the 80s. I mean, just by what you're wearing. But Rick, what was your tenure of active service?
I did from 1979 till 2001 active, and then I rolled over to the civilian side from 2001 till 2013. So I did 34 years altogether. And it's hard to describe, as a civilian there, it's hard to describe what your actual job is because the people that think you're active duty, civilian, they don't even know the difference. But in that team, there is really no difference except you're not carrying a gun and kicking the door down. But you're still an integral part of the operations that are going on.
Absolutely. The biggest comment I was just at 30 when I retired and rolled over into a position with all the L&Os as basically the guy running them. And I just remember being 2 years after retired, standing in an airplane in a dry suit, getting ready to do a boat drop and saying to myself, I thought I retired.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a different dimension there. People understand that you're right. Other than carrying a gun, you're still doing a lot of the same things.
Right.
So when you decided to move on and come down here, for me, the hardest part of it was not leaving the mission, not leaving the grind. It was leaving the brotherhood. So you still have a little bit of that here.
Yeah, absolutely. People come here all the time, right? So I see guys constantly. So they'll always ask me like, when are you going back to the reunion, or you're going back to Stump Muster or some other gathering? And I'm like, going, I have that every day. So I'm good. I'm good. I don't
Right,
need
they
any
come
more.
here,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. They come here, which is nice now. And now California. So it's like I get both coasts.
Are you back and forth setting them up for
Constantly. Yeah, absolutely. And the other great thing about the California Museum is that we're going to hit every single seal that makes it through buds.
Got it.
That to be able to educate, because when I came in the Navy, I had no idea about the history and heritage, right? I just knew I wanted to try to be a SEAL. I went through all this training, didn't know why I was carrying a rubber boat on my head until I moved here to the museum, and then they explained it why. So that would have been really handy to know while I was going through training, because I thought it was just a torture technique that the instructors used, make us carry rubber boats. But it started right here in Fort Pierce, because that's what they would load these boats with: explosives, paddle them into the obstacle field, and blow up the obstacles.
Got it.
So, but there's just like, that's one of 100 different things that started here that I wish I had known.
You brought up something interesting. I can't tell you, like, so many people don't understand why guys come to the community. There's different draws. Some of it's a family tradition. Some of it, I know guys that join the SEAL community because of, they saw how Dick Marchenko was portrayed. There's different reasons that do the draw. I mean, I personally was of that generation where I had a judge make the decision for me. And, and he pretty much was like, you need to have an enlistment contract or you're going somewhere else. And I did. And all I told the recruiter was, and it was interesting because I went to all four services, and I went with my uncle, who was a Force Recon Vietnam era guy. I went to all four services, and I just wanted to do something in special operations, and I had no clue. And he is the one that told me that the best offer I got coming off the street was to go to the Rangers. So I went there because I wanted to do the hardest thing that I could do coming off the street. I didn't know anything about it. I got there and your eyes open up, and then you start to realize what you want to do in the community. It sounds like you kind of had a little bit of the same experience.
Yeah. So when I went into the recruiter's office, I was 16 years old because I was going to graduate when I was 17. And I fully intended on becoming a submariner or submariner, until I walked into the office, and on his desk, he had a pamphlet for Navy SEALs. I had no idea what it was. I took the pamphlet home, looked at it. It looked really cool, right? Jumping and diving and shooting and doing all the cool stuff. Clueless. I went back to the office and said, hey, look, I want to be a SEAL. And the recruiter, of course, is like, yeah, there's an easy quota right there, sucker. Anyway, right. So I signed up, and then, the rest is history. And when I didn't really figure out what the hell I was doing until I got the buds. And you have to figure that out really quickly at that point.
You're not going to be around.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
No, and it's interesting too, because you came in a couple of years before me. I came in at end of 81, and the transformation we saw of the military. I mean, I'll tell you, it was just a different culture post-Vietnam era. The one thing I was fortunate for me in the Rangers, and I bet you experienced a lot of the same, was all the senior leaders were Vietnam era guys.
Yep.
And it was pretty interesting, the way they looked at life and how serious they were and all that. And then we kind of transitioned where we had a gap where those guys were gone, and we moved up into those leadership positions. And we would get the occasional, the Grenada, the Panama, the Mogadishu, the Desert Storms. But for me, it wasn't until 2001 when 9/11 happened that I saw the transformation. I think my first 20 years, our tactics and equipment evolved at such a slow pace, because half the time we were just trying to sell our capability because the big military didn't really recognize us. But from 2001 forward, I would say from 2001 to 2004, we had more technology capability changes than I did my first 20 years. And that was because of the war.
Yep.
So just kind of crazy.
Yeah. If you come to the museum, you'll see a beam from the South Tower of the World Trade Center as a centerpiece inside our museum because of what you just said. So what happened when 9/11 happened, it changed everything, all of Special Forces, SEALs included. And we started working better together. We started doing things like having the same call signs and call for fire and all these other things that we just took for granted because we were always in competition with each other. And, 9/11 brought us all together to make us more effective.
Agreed. And that formulation of squadrons and troops and having the same language. And again, you're right. And it made it a lot easier. The one thing that I always appreciated with the relationships, a lot of the other places we would go, we would walk in as flight leads, and there would be always two distinct differences. When I would go to Naval Special Warfare, they would show me the target and ask me how I could best prosecute it from the air side. And then we would weigh in everything about intelligence and all that. A lot of the other places I would go, they would tell me how they wanted it done. And I was like, well, that's not the smartest way. How about we do it this way? So it was a good culture. I think the one thing the Navy always respected with the 160th was, we're the experts. You tell us how you can best suit it, and this is what we're looking to do. And we created some pretty interesting stuff. I mean, things like starting to infill outside a small arms range on the other side of a mountain for signature and all that. All that was developed in Afghanistan. All that was developed with the Navy community. And it changed the way we did business. So,
Well, the 160th, definitely the best pilots in the world, bar none. And one of the things, I talk about when I'm giving a speech, everybody wants to know about leadership and SEALs and that. And I said, you just have to know what your capabilities are, and you have to know what others' capabilities are, because SEALs don't need to be planning air ops and helicopters, right? They need to take it on board, just like we don't need to be planning for the submarine ops. The submariners do that kind of thing. So it's like, that's the biggest thing that I can see. Nobody's good at everything. And as long as you understand that and you're humble enough to take it on, then you're going to succeed. And I think that's what makes it different.
So staying within the confines of what you're doing, what message would you give to new young SEALs coming in the door right now? You've been doing this a long time.
Wow. What would I give? I would just say, hang in there, because there's always these leadership changes, right? So you might have the best boss in the world, but he's only going to be there for 2 years. But then you might have the worst boss for 2 years. So just hang in there long enough to see the transition, and hopefully their next guy will be good, or he won't. It's just a crapshoot.
No, I agree. And the only other thing I'll add to that, what I tell my guys is, don't you be the one to slip. Stay on top of your fitness, stay on top of your skills, because if you're going to lead from the front. That's the biggest thing I see. So, fun topic I want to talk about. I'm looking at your leg here. I can remember you calling me years ago. I was still up there at Demneck, and you wanted to get some link in with the FAA to start doing demo jumps here. And we started connecting you with guys in the FAA airspace and all that. And you guys do a ton of jumps here. And I remember my conversation, who you have doing the jumps? And you're like, well, I am. And I'm like, well, aren't we too old for this? So talk to me about what happened with this.
So, as you know, it only takes one bad jump, right? Or one bad landing, I should say. So I have like 2,500 jumps, believe it or not. And, as part of any guy in a special ops, you want to keep doing SEAL stuff or whatever you're doing, whether it's shooting and this and that and the other thing. And one of the things to promote the museum I started doing was jumping here and at the museum and at different events. And I did it for a couple of years, right? And then successfully, but then I started pushing the envelope, right? You don't want risk averse SEALs, you don't want risk averse 160th guys, but I didn't have the support team behind me like I did when I was at the team. It was just me, and I was making some stupid mistakes, and that's basically what happened. I screwed up. I was coming in too hot, and I'll tell the whole story. So if you ever want to hear about a wedding fail, right? So my first wife, Susan, she passed, and I was lucky enough, and I found another gal. Her name's Barbara, and at our wedding, I decided that it would be a great idea for me to jump into the wedding, right? Even though she said no, I said, yeah, I got this, right?
Famous words.
So,
I got this.
Yeah. She actually said, please don't do this. And I said, and I didn't listen. And I should have, hopefully she won't watch this. But anyway, I jumped in. I wasn't going to make the landing zone. And as I was heading to my backup, which was the water, I was heading screaming in at like 30 miles an hour, and my foot hit a pier and it ripped it off. And then I hit the water.
Wedding day.
Yeah. So as I pulled myself up onto the pier, my wife, God bless her, comes running down in her wedding dress to make sure I'm still alive.
And you don't have a foot.
And it was kind of hanging on with a tendon. But so I pulled myself up on the pier and I just yelled, first I swore and then I said, call 911. And then the next thing you know, I'm in an ambulance getting my foot sewed back on. It lasted a couple of years, but it kept getting infected. And it was just the best move for me to chop it off. You know why? It's like, because I knew a lot of guys that actually were amputees, right? So it wasn't like foreign to me. And I knew, and I called these guys for advice and they kind of walked me through it. And I just made the choice one day and bang, made my life so much better.
So I heard this story, got a hold of Rick, and I'm like, dude, we're too old to be doing this. Now let's flash forward. Last year I'm in Normandy and I'm with 7 Frogmen, like I've alluded to before. And we're doing all free fall demos, and we got some waivers because of the crew we had. We're jumping with the Leapfrogs, we're jumping with the Golden Knights out of both military aircraft and historic aircraft. We actually got to jump out of it's called That's All Brother, which was the lead C-47 for the Normandy invasion. And we're doing these jumps, and I want to say it was June 8th, so we'd already done our D-Day jumps and everything. And we are trying to jump, I want to say it was Easy Company's DZ, and we really wanted to jump this thing. And it got to a point where the cloud deck was so low and everybody's canceling. And we had a different DZ crew out there. They were set up for static line, but they remained on station for us. And the altitude, we kept saying yes, yes, yes. Well, it got to a point where if we wanted to get out, we were going to have to go out at about 3,500 feet with free fall rigs. So nobody do this. We turned our Cypresses off because you know the deal.
Yeah.
So we turned our Cypresses off, which is an activation device for your reserve if it doesn't fire. And we got out of the airplane at like 3,500 feet, went right into a cloud deck. So everybody got in a stack, everybody no turns, going through the clouds the way you're supposed to. And as we all start popping out, and I'm talking some 8 very experienced jumpers, we come out and boom, there's the drop zone off to our right. And there's the T, the code letter. And everybody realized we had to do an aggressive turn to make this drop zone. So, and we're all jumping non-standards at the time. So we all got into it and kept in a formation. We had a tandem in there. Lou Massey was jumping a tandem. And as we're coming downwind and we turn to final, so we never had time to do a penetration check because of the altitude and the clouds. We turned to final and we realized we have a complete tailwind. They had the T backwards.
Oh.
So we're like you doing like 35 miles an hour. We're jumping performance rigs and we have a full tailwind and it's smoking. There's nothing you can do about it at this point with the altitude at. I mean, I want to say I turned on the final like 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
And I'm going where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
So we're coming smoking into this thing, and now we see at the long end of the DZ, there's wires that are perpendicular to us. So everybody is doing everything they can, front risers, this, that, and the other. I decide, because it's about a 3-foot high crop field, that I'm going to try and lift my legs and skid in and ride. That works for about the first 10 feet, and then I hit a huge knoll that was hidden in the grass, and I basically completely went ass over tea kettle and smashed my right elbow. I fractured my elbow. My elbow went up into where my tricep was. My tricep completely severed. So my tricep was up in my shoulder. I hit so hard, Rick, and three frogmen can verify this. I killed a groundhog. I landed on a groundhog and killed him. And it was like one of those, I've got to call these guys over here. So they all come over. Here's where the Bruno stupid factor gets in. The next day, we're jumping a 1,000-year-old castle called Mont Saint Michel, and it's a big way. All 5 jump teams, so it's the Knights, the Leapfrogs, our team, the Neptune Raiders, and then it was the Canadian and the British team. We're all getting in this C-130, and we're all going to get out over this thing. I wasn't missing this jump, so I have a fractured elbow and a torn tricep, and I still go do the jump.
With your right arm. Good job.
Yeah. And well, that was the conversation. Ben, who was the lead jumper for the Leapfrogs, he's like, you can be able to fly. You can be able to get that mane out. I'm like, sure. If you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough. So when and the best part was getting on the 130. It was at Air Force 130. The loadmaster says to us, how many guys you got? I'm like, well, how many you authorized to take? He's like 49. I'm like 49. We had 67 jumpers.
Yeah.
So we packed 67 guys in there. I'm actually on the ramp. There's so many of us. We get out, we go over the drop zone. I get out in free fall. I'm flying fine. And then I go to dump and I can barely get the pilot chute out. I got the pilot chute out. I'm under main. I cannot lift my right arm. So I can't fly. So I had to I unstowed my left brake, put it in my teeth, grab a right brake, and I'm trying to land with both toggles in my left hand. And thank God for beach sand, because I came in and crashed pretty hard. I made the drop zone and I hit the beach sand pretty hard. And that's when I got on an airplane and flew home and went right to Centura and got some surgery.
Oh, damn.
So you and I'll just say the message to everybody out there that gets on up there in age and continues to press it is maybe think through it. Neither of us learned.
Yep. Like your earlier question, what advice would you give a younger SEAL? Is like, don't do what we did.
Right.
Follow your training.
Yeah. Follow your training. And maybe also have a ground support team that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
That always helps. So how old are you right now, Rick?
63.
Okay. I'm going to be 60 in a little while. I knew I was chasing you still, but what, besides what you're doing with the museum, what personally, what other ambitions and stuff do you have out there? Because I know you still stay very athletic.
Well, yeah, I try to. So I'll give you a good story. So Rudy Bosch,
Yep,
first Command Master Chief of SEAL Team 2. Anyway, he trained here as a scout and raider in World War II, right here in Fort Pierce.
Wow.
Right. So when I got to SEAL Team 2 as a young man, he'd already been in the Navy for 20 plus years, and had already been in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And so when I showed up, he was like an idol to me, right? So he kept himself in good shape all the time. He PT'd with the guys, he ran, did the obstacle courses, did all the swims. And I said, that's what I want to do. Right. So that's, I've kind of lived his method, right? So just do as much as you can do and don't give up. So that's what I do here. So the museum keeps me busy. So my wife and I do a lot of traveling for the fundraising and everything else we got going on. So right now, I really don't, other than taking care of the house and making sure my wife's happy with me, and she hasn't got rid of me yet. So I'm busy enough. So when I retire, we'll talk.
Yeah, you're like me. You're never going to retire. So age is just a number. We both know that. But the one thing I see when I look at you, I see a lot of guys that have completely retired. Maybe get into stuff that ages them fast. But I think staying active keeps. I think the biggest thing I see with our community is guys might still stay active in the gym and running and swimming and all that, but they don't keep their brain active. And I think when you retire, you got to have something that keeps it active.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll do some more SEAL stories, whatever. But I still, coming up on 60, don't have retirement in my path right now, because I think the day I retire is the day I start losing that edge. Do you have a goal for retiring? I used to always say I want to be done by 62, because then you could draw that early Social Security, but I'm not ready.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't have a date in mind, to be honest with you. I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing something, regardless if it's at the museum or whatever. So I want to get a job as a boat captain for some big yacht for some rich guy that takes it out once a month, a year. You know what I mean? I can do that.
But you're running the boat when you want.
Exactly.
That's not a bad gig right there. You've been down here how long in Florida?
12 years, 13 years. Yeah. I love Florida. I'm originally from Milwaukee, and I always said I'm not going to, shovel snow for the rest of my life, and I don't have to do that here. So life is good.
I remember going from Chicago to Milwaukee, and you connected me with a bunch of people to set an urban up there, and I went and checked that out. Yeah, Milwaukee's a little bit cold for me. I'm a Florida boy. I grew up down the road in Fort Lauderdale. I definitely, at some point in time, see me leaving Virginia Beach and ending up back in Florida, because the longer I go, the less I care about that winter thing.
Yeah.
How's that? I'm not a big cold fan.
Yeah. Your biggest worry here is whether you put a t-shirt on in the morning to walk the dog. That's it.
Well, and the other thing I've noticed here where you're at particular, I don't know if it's a miracle and I need to knock on some wood here real quick, but you guys seem to, I think you guys have had like one hurricane in 30 years. They seem to always go around this area.
Yeah, we had last year, unfortunately, the hurricane didn't get us. It was tornadoes. So that came along from the other coast that kind of hit us hard. But other than that, we've been doing pretty good.
So the next question I ask you about the new SEALs coming in. What about the guys going out the back door? The biggest thing I worry about with guys, and a lot of the foundations are addressing this now, is the mental health. So we all know there is operator syndrome, there is blast injury, there is PTSD, and I have my own belief on PTSD. I truly believe PTSD is not caused by the environmentals. It's not caused by shooting people on target. It's caused by losing your brothers. I really think that's what fucks guys up. But what message do you have for guys going out the back door? Like
I would say that, when you're in the military, you do a lot of planning, right? Plan, and then you adjust plan as the enemy has a say in everything. But what a lot of guys do is they don't plan their own exit, right? They don't have an exit. They just get out, and then they say, "I'll figure it out once I get out," and it doesn't work. And I think that's where guys really struggle if they don't have an exit plan, like a next career or your next what are you going to do with your life instead of hanging out with your wife and your kids? It just doesn't work. So I would say you have to plan at least, and then adjust from there, because you've done it your whole life. And when you're just going to flounder if you don't do that.
No, and you see a lot of guys. One of the things that I've seen in the last 5 years, and I think it's pretty awesome, is you're seeing a lot of guys start foundations, charities, 501(c)s, whatever you want to call it. And they really are targeting helping veterans and families and all that. That's one of the things at Born Primitive that we're really big on doing right now. At least on Born Primitive Tactical, our side that I run is any charity or foundation that I'm getting involved with right now is for the actual veterans' health. There's so many foundations out there that are working with the spouses and the families and all that, and we support a lot of them. But I really want to assist with the guys, because you look at the dirty little numbers, like how many suicides there are a day of both military and law enforcement, and some of the illnesses that I talked about operator syndrome and blast injury. I want to say it was over 20 years before Agent Orange was acknowledged as an actual thing from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how long it's going to be before they actually acknowledge some of the environmental stuff. And if you think about like what guys were just exposed to overseas with either shit being burned or the stuff they're breathing in that's in the dust and all that kind of stuff, I think it's really going to impact guys' health. So I will say that not only have a exit strategy and a plan, but this is the time to start seeing doctors, which we never do, and getting health checkups. Have you ever heard of Hunter 7 Foundation?
No.
So there's a foundation out there, and it's for all of SOF. If you're a SOCOM person, and I believe they're now delving into conventional military as well, because it's getting a pretty widely known foundation. And it's all through beneficiaries and donations and everything. But I got connected with them about 2 years ago, and I'm feeding a lot of guys there now. But they do these full body scans. They do an initial test, and then they determine if you need, but they have, I want to say the company's called Prenovo that they go through, and there's like 7 or 8 geographic locations in the States you go to, and you're in this moving MRI machine for like 90 minutes. And they can tell you, I think it's other than skin cancer and blood disorder, they can tell you if there's anything wrong with you, blockages, tumors, this, that, and the other. My thing is like, we're starting to see, I'm sure you're seeing it too. Like you get the calls every month now about a guy sick, a guy dying. But yeah, Hunter 7 Foundation is another one that I plug all the time. Do you work with any groups or anything like that?
We work with a lot of groups. Obviously the Navy SEAL Foundation is a big partner of ours. And you bring up a good point, Bruno, is once I get California open in October, I'm going to shift my focus to a goal that I've had for a long time. So there's about 50 plus Navy SEAL 501c3s, and not even counting all the ones you're talking about. And nobody knows what they all do. And there's not one place to call to say, hey, I need help with, this, and where can I go? And that's what I want the museums, a part of our focus, to go to. And so we can be that, not clearinghouse, but at least information place that people can go to, because we're a museum, right? This is our job. But I really want to be able to help people identify where else they can go for help, because with 50 different organizations out there,
It's a lot of
I don't
reach.
even know what most of them do, right? I know what the big guys do. I know what the foundation does. I know what the museum does. And there's a couple other big like the Legacy Foundation and things like that. But that's my next goal, and I think it's needed, and I think people are really gonna accept it, because we're like non-threatening. You got a lot of guys that are starting their own 501c3s, a lot of A personalities. They don't want to share. They don't want to, they're afraid of money and donor poaching and stuff like that. But the museum, we have our mission, right? And that's to preserve the history and heritage. So we're like non-threatening. I'm not starting a program for health, right? But I'll tell you where to go to get that done,
Right.
or if you want to scan or whatever. And that's my next goal.
That's huge, because you're exactly right. We get contacted because we support foundations. We get contacted all the time, and I'm like, never heard of you, don't know what your mission is, don't even, who is your structure of leadership and all that. We're very active with a few, obviously Navy SEAL Foundation, SEAL Future Foundation is another
Yep.
one we're big with. And then there's some smaller ones. We're actually, some guys out of development group started a program, and we do a lot with law enforcement, and it's called Community First. And it's interesting because what they do, and they're very good at fundraising, they're going into towns, and they were just in Fort Lauderdale, they're in Texas, they're in New England, but they're going in and they're training police officers in crisis response, not SWAT teams, but the first responder, the guy that shows up at a school shooting or something like that, and they're doing it for free. So they raise money, they raise capital, they find these, like I know they were with Fort Lauderdale, Fort Worth, and they go to these cities and they don't talk to the SWAT team. They talk to the police officers that'll be the first one to arrive at a mass shooting, and they crawl, walk, run. They start them on the range, and by the end of the week, they're doing, a pickup game of 5 officers show up, and they're going through a school, and they're finding the shooter, and they're identifying triage. And it's pretty cool because they're taking their tier 1 lessons learned, and they're basically teaching police officers that either 1, don't have the funding for this training, or 2, have never been exposed to it. And they're making communities safer. And it's something we're hugely behind. Matter of fact, we are running, if not every quarter, semi-annually for local Virginia Beach PD, we're sponsoring courses where we're putting them through. And the way we see it is we're making the community safer. And it's kind of one of those things where you as a business can go to them and be like, hey, I'd like to get this for my police department. And they can be like, well, if you're there and you're writing this check, we can go do that. So
yeah, that's great.
It's neat. And there's other ones out there. I do like the ones that are focusing on the health aspect and the mental health, though, because it's so, I mean, you think about the process when you get out. There's nobody like, I wonder why our community doesn't have a definitive book on getting out, like everything that's like, I just found out recently, I've been retired now for 13 years from active duty. And I just found out recently, as a 100% disabled veteran, that I can actually send my 100% disabled veteran letter off to Deers, and I am not supposed to be paying my insurance premiums on my health care. And I'm like, you're not supposed to be paying your annual, whatever it's called, but you still have it's like $500 a year or something like that.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't be paying that. And the irony of it is, and I guarantee you have the same thing. When I came in 81,
you're gonna have to tell me about that later.
Yeah, I just learned about it. 13 years retired, and I'm writing a check for like $75 every month for something but nobody tells you this.
Yeah.
So, and literally just found out about that. I'm like, there's no freaking way.
Wow.
And they're like, oh yeah, we just don't tell everybody. Deers doesn't tell everybody. It's like a little secret. I'm like, well, where's the book of secrets?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't somebody writing? So anybody that's got the bandwidth for this, let's get the book of secrets on everything guys are entitled to and get it out there in the hands of everybody, because it's, the deal. You go 20 years, and especially, I think this is hard in the soft community. You're getting, whether it's flight pay, demo pay, jump pay, proficiency pay, language pay, all the cool stuff, the incentive bonuses you get. And then when you retire, it's based off of your year's service and a percentage, and all that money goes away. And guys are like, holy shit. And oh, by the way, for those that don't know it, you could be a 20-year SEAL, or you could be a 20-year cook, and your retirement is the same. It's based on your rate and time of service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah, it is what it is.
But it's what we signed up for,
yeah,
right? It's for the mission.
Nobody signs up to get rich, that's for sure.
No, you definitely do not, and we're still not.
No.
So, but if you get that boat captain job, I want to hear about it.
I still won't get rich.
No. So we've got a fun guest that's coming in here, and it'll be good. When was the last time you saw Norm?
Years ago. I can't even tell you when.
Okay, so he's excited to see you again. I know that I believe there was 3 of you that were with them over in Mogadishu. Four
or 5 actually altogether.
Okay. And for those that don't know it, the whole movie Black Hawk Down, everything is very Army focused, but Rick was one of the snipers from the Navy SEAL side of the house that was actually on that operation, part of that mission. And the boys love what you guys did over there. And I mean, for what it's worth, could have been your aircraft that, decided to do what Schuchart and Gordon did, and all that is just the way shit plays out. So
yeah, I think about that all the time. What would I have done in that situation? Probably the same thing, but you never know.
No, you don't know. Anything else that you want to talk about? Anything you can think of out there? Especially what I really want to make sure people know. We've talked about the mission, the museum, and what everybody can do, but I really, the culture and the heritage of the SEAL teams is right here. So
I would just say, if you have a child, or if you have a grandchild, bring them here, let them see the museum, let them touch, let them climb on the stuff. Because if SEALs can't break it, kids can't break it, right? So, it's not a typical museum in that respect. Things aren't roped off. You get to climb inside the helicopter, and you get a feel for this stuff, and it just gives them a different experience that they're not used to. It just opens up, because we don't care if they become Navy SEALs. We just want them to do something more than live on their cell phone, right? Put down the damn phone and become something more, right? Learn about honor, courage, commitment, sacrifice. And maybe you'll be that kid that becomes the next fireman, or the next policeman, or the next teacher, or the next SEAL. And, it could start right here.
Yep. So you already said, right? Fireman, police officer, teacher, all these people that serve to bring our culture a step forward. That's the biggest thing, is if you look at America right now, look at the amount of people that have ever served in the military, look at Congress, the amount of people that have ever served and things like that. We just had Flag Day the other day, along with the Army's 250th birthday. You don't have freedom, which is not free in this nation, without service. And to me, I'll go a step further. Service is not just the military. It's our law enforcement, our firefighters, our first responders. Like the one thing I've always said, and I don't think people ever put this together, for a guy like Rick or a guy like myself to go overseas and have your head in the game, which it must be, is you got to know that everybody at home is safe. And when you have police, and you have EMS, and you have firemen, and you have all these things here, you put you're like, hey, your family's in good hands. You take care of your immediate household, and you go do your job. And that's what America expects the military to do, is to go do their job. And as you guys see what's ramping up right now between Israel and Iran, it may be time to go do our job again. We'll see where this goes, right? And who's always, we don't know anymore. We're not in the know. And I tell guys, I don't want to know until it's over anymore. But I'm sure there's some of our boys already doing great stuff right now. It's just the way it is. One last thing I want to talk about, and then we'll close this up. I know that the museum here, you've got a couple really cool Jack barrels out there, and you guys are tied to Jack and all that. But I want to give you something cool. So what we have here, this is a bottle of 12-year. For those that don't know it, our next guest that's coming in here, Norm Hooten, is with Hooten and Young, and they do cigars and whiskey, and we're very close with them. And what we always do when we lose a brother is we do a toast. Special occasion, like to do a toast. And this is some amazing whiskey. Was unable to get the 16-year Jack Carr edition, which I think would be more appropriate. So I'm going to make sure Norm gets you a couple bottles for the museum here because it's perfect for here. But from Houghton and Young and from us at the Hot Wash Podcast, there's a bottle for you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And then
I've been known to drink a little bit of this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you're going to enjoy that one. That is freaking smooth. And they make a great rye, and they make some good stuff. And on the 4th of July, they're coming out with an actual Kentucky bourbon, which is going to be pretty fun. And Rick, one other thing that I just want to do before you leave, we are all about tradition, boat services and everything. So I can remember when you gave me your coin from down here, which was the first time I'd seen the flipper bottle opener type coin. So I'm going to come right back at you. We've got a coin for the podcast. On one side it says Born Primitive Tactical, on the other side it says the Hot Wash. So brother, thank you for everything.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Love you, man.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. So I gave you my coin, so you got to pull it out. So it's a dual use.
All right, let's see it, everybody. Here it is.
So it's a...
Oh, hell yeah.
It's a bottle opener, and what else?
Looks to me like I could.
There you go.
Oh, hell yeah.
Dual use coin.
I like that. That's genius. And it's got the flag on it.
I used to give out the double finger, but the TSA kept taking them. So
no, this is perfect.
They don't take that.
And if y'all don't realize what this for, it's survival skills. Thank you, brother. And then the other thing is we work with Montana Knife. Anybody that knows Josh Smith knives, these are a cult-like knife. It's amazing. He just did the War Goat, which is my everyday carry blade. I want to say they sold something like 5,000 blades in like 9 minutes. If you can get a hold of them, it's a treat. But I've got a knife here from from Josh and Montana Knives. My only rule with that is don't cut yourself.
Right. No.
Right.
So that's the last thing you ever want to see is a Navy SEAL with a knife in a rubber boat. So the boat either gets poked or your buddy right next to you gets poked, right?
But they make an amazing blade.
Very nice.
That is the TF24. Huge fan of them, and I'm glad we can work with them. We always like to give our guests for their time something fun. So now my only thing to you is please don't play with the knife while drinking the whiskey. But Rick, any closing comments before we go away? No,
I want to thank you. Getting the word out is half the battle, and with your podcast and everything else that you guys do at Born Primitive. Thank you.
Now, thanks for having us and allowing us to come in what I think is sacred ground in your house here. Again, Rick is one of the reasons that I went from the Army over to working with the Navy side. So it's an honor to be here. Please pass this podcast on to other people because the mission of the museum is enduring and what they do. And this is an amazing place to come check out. It is a piece of our American history. So come to the museum. Fort Pierce, Florida. You can just Google National Navy SEAL UDT Museum. It comes up in Google Maps, Apple Maps right away. Very easy to find. There's some great lunch spots around here and stuff too. And then they're opening in October this year, the one in San Diego, which sounds like a much different experience. So I would go see both. And thank you for following the Hot Wash podcast. You guys have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Hot Wash by Born Primitive Tactical. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow us at Born Primitive Tactical. I'll see you next time.